Welcome back to Atlanta Diaries. I'm your host Enma Popley. Thank you for joining me. In Atlanta Diaries, we celebrate unique and inspiring stories of breakthrough women to help future generations create their own. If you want to know more about Atlanta or listen to more episodes, you can visit my website www.enmapopley.com. You can also share feedback or suggestions there. Welcome to another inspiring episode of Atlanta Diaries, where I have the privilege of introducing Fatin Arifin, a catalyst for development and a passionate advocate for entrepreneurship and youth empowerment, making a significant impact both locally and regionally. Fatin's impressive journey began with the founding of several initiatives, including the Chevening Youth Forum Southeast Asia in 2017. Through these platforms, she has engaged with over 10,000 young individuals, providing them with opportunities for personal and skills development. In 2021, during Brunei's ASEAN Chairmanship, Fatin assumed the role of Chairperson for the ASEAN Young Entrepreneurs Council and founded the ASEAN Young Women Entrepreneurs Club. Fatin is serving the second term as the President of YEAB Brunei and continues to drive other community endeavors alongside her full-time leadership position at Ghanim. Fatin's accomplishments have earned her prestigious recognition, such as the Meritorious Youth Service Award and ASEAN Youth Award. Without further ado, let's listen to Fatin's powerful life lessons and find inspiration and motivation in her incredible journey. Hi, Fatin. Very warm welcome to Atlanta Diaries, and thank you for being a part of my journey to inspire other women leaders.
Oh, thank you so much, Enma, for inviting me to this platform. And also, I would like to give my due thanks as well to Navita for recommending me to be part of this platform. And I think that's the, power of network, I suppose, yeah?
Yeah, and it's also the power of bringing like-minded people together. I think that's how I see it.
Thanks for putting together this inspiring platform, to be honest. And it's really nice to hear stories of women from different walks of life.
It started as a passion project and it has completely consumed me and in a nice way. So yeah, I'm also very, very grateful for all the Atlantas in my journey who are bringing their authentic selves.
Wonderful. And I hope you will be able to go much global. I think now that we are connected, inshallah, Southeast Asia, I think find more women for you to connect to in Southeast Asia.
Sounds lovely. I look forward to getting those names from you then. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into my first question. Love to know how your early years shaped your journey, and was there any mantra as you started your journey? Because 40 countries in 30 years, and I know a lot of them solo. So what is it that made you the kind of person it did?
Thank you for this wonderful question. So I grew up in, mixed family in some ways. My mom is a Bruneian. My father is a Malaysian. I grew up mostly in Brunei. So throughout high school, people were labeling me as this Malaysian girl. So I always felt like I'm not a local, right? And also because my dad sent us off to boarding school in Malaysia, just so that we get the teachings of Malaysian values in us. So 3 of us actually went and live abroad at a young age, 7 to 8 years old, alhamdulillah. So I always had that identity crisis, I suppose, back in Brunei, because I was not having a Bruneian passport, I suppose. I had to follow my father's passport at that time. So that has always made me very conscious about who I am and what value I provide. And also, I grew up in a society where, women in Brunei thrive well. And also, I suppose I would call the women in my family to be very strong-minded. So I was given a lot of freedom, trust, accountability from my parents. And that has, I suppose, led me to be able to travel the world starting at a young age by myself. And I've always believed in living life purposefully. I've always had this fear about being regretful on your deathbed. I didn't want to, should I die young, I feel regret of not having done enough in my life. So that has, I suppose, guided me throughout the years to where I am today, alhamdulillah. Yes.
I love that. Fatin, purpose is very close to my heart also. And I think I'm quite intentional about it. So I know you did it at a very young age. So what do you think is the reason for that? to talk about, I don't want to have any regrets on my deathbed. It's a very strong and a very powerful way to look at it.
Growing up, I did feel confused about my identity because of the society label towards me. So I was always like spending time discovering myself, writing my journal, thinking, reading, spending time by myself. And because I was an introverted child, and I am introvert by nature as well, and that just got me to really discover things, got me to really think. My friends like to call me the coffee shop philosopher. And I think also because my family came out from the 1962 rebellion. So we're part of history, I suppose. And watching how my grandmother was this woman with no entrepreneurial background, was just being a mother of, I think, about 14, 15 children, and having had to take care of all the children by herself because her husband had to go to jail, and also taking care of her husband's siblings' children as well. So hearing stories from my grandmother about how she had to feed for survival and all that. So that really also, I guess, made me very inspired growing up, and seeing my mom as well and my aunties having zest for life, and they fight for life. So I think that has always, I guess, guided me in some ways.
So what is your purpose, Fatin?
I would like to live a life where I contribute to society, but also to ensure myself as a Muslim woman as well, that I come to life being useful to others, and also being close to my creator, of course, obviously. Those are all very important. Ensuring that my parents are well taken care of, my siblings are all, doing well, because a lot of times we tend to think that our parents will always be well until we forget that they grow old, and where did time go? And, you're only 21 once in your life. So it's to ensure that I spend time wisely. I think that's also an important priority in my life.
Beautiful. You're speaking about a lot of intention and mindfulness, Share with me, what does your day look like?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for that question. I work full-time at a Brunei government company that looks after the development of the food industry together with our government agencies. So it's called the Brunei Halal Foods, or rather Ghanim International Corporation, where our role is to support the development, or rather diversification of the economy through the development of the food industry here in Brunei. I am looking after business development, sales, marketing, and also our retail program. I have to really think together with my CEO, with the team, about how can we be this catalyst, because, we come late to the game in terms of food industry development. And also Brunei has been talking about diversification for many years, since 1950s. And yet our economy is still largely made up of oil and gas and downstream oil and gas now. So, we are trying to move away from that. So that's, one part of my life. I also am the co-founder of the Young Professionals Network, which is a network for young people that I set up together with my colleagues, and now is home to about 13 core members and also at least 35 mentors. So this platform we created to support the development of young people here in Brunei, to become better leaders, to have mentors, and also basically a platform to challenge our young people, or rather young professionals, to help contribute to national development. So we have a platform which is in fact happening next week, what we call the Youth Town Hall Brunei, to engage with our ministers. Yeah, so far I think we've engaged with at least 7 ministers of Brunei to enable our young people to understand what's national development like. So we want to encourage constructive engagements, because we do believe that is important. I am also the president of the Young Entrepreneurs Association of Brunei, which is very close to my heart, because I have been part of this association since I was 21 years old, believe it or not. And I am now past my mid-30s, alhamdulillah. And growing up as someone who was timid in some ways. I mean, I am comfortable with my family, but not necessarily in public at that time when I was 20. So we are a network of about 150 entrepreneurs now. And we also are part of what we call the bigger networks of ASEAN, the Southeast Asian network of young entrepreneurs, basically growing the entrepreneurial capacity of our Bruneians, entrepreneurial mindset, and also just encouraging our entrepreneurs to think bigger, to go abroad. Because Brunei is a small economy. about 400,000 people, 500,000. So how much can you get from Brunei? So that's why it's imperative for our young entrepreneurs to think global, to think bigger. So that's how I spend my time. But other than that, I spend a lot of my time with family. I have 11 or 12 nephews and nieces. I lost count because I keep forgetting their names as well sometimes. I wake up usually by 4:30 maximum. And if I'm sleepy or tired, I, go back to sleep before I go to work. Yeah.
So there are like two shifts you're operating on, looks like. Fatin, when I was listening to you and I was listening to your energy and your enthusiasm, I was wondering, on one hand, you said that I'm an introvert. What really inspired you to set up Young Professional Network or get involved in Young Entrepreneurs Association?
Yeah. When we grow up, there's always that societal expectation towards us that you study, you get your degree, you get a job, you buy your car, you get married, and then, have children. So when I first started work, and I was at that time 21 years old, and I was questioning myself, is this it to life? Because throughout your life, everybody talks about working, working, working. And even in our circle, when I was growing up, I remember my friends in high school saying, oh, I cannot wait to work. I cannot wait to earn my own income. So I kept questioning this in the first 3 days of working because I just couldn't fathom the 9 to 5 life. So that got me to actually scout around in terms of finding community. Because I do think that, the first thing you do if you're looking for something else is to find like-minded people, right? You mentioned this earlier just now in the podcast. So I found, like-minded people through Young Entrepreneurs Association of Brunei. And at that time, to be honest, I was this timid in public young person. So I met amazing people, one of them being Kahafimi. She used to be the member of the Legislative Council up until last year. And she was one of those role models and mentor that pushed me to get outside my comfort zone as well, to be brave, I suppose, or to be bold, to start public speaking, to be part of things and organize things. So through YEAB, initially I started out as a recipient to the programs. And then I started being a volunteer to support the hosting of programs. So that sort of like also built my confidence, I suppose, in terms of understanding what value I can provide to society. And also got me as well to be part of the committee. So that is why I'm now the president, serving my second term, about 20 years of YEAB being in the picture. I see the evolution, I suppose, in my own skill. So like a lot of people used to question me before, why are you volunteering? And this is something that I personally advocate for as well. And something I'm so passionate about doing is that when you volunteer, you may not be paid financially, but you actually gain so much skill and you discover a lot of things that you're capable of doing that you would not have otherwise known. I would not have otherwise known I was good at organizing if I had not done community work. For example, through YEAB, I have learned so much about doing forums, right? So much about public engagements that after I came back from my Chevening in 2014, I was so inspired by my journey in the UK that when I came back, I wanted to be able to pay it forward because I got a scholarship by the British government. And, imagine a no strings attached scholarship. It's pretty amazing, spending my whole year in London at that time. And I was so inspired by the fact that people value my thoughts, my opinions. And we started up what we call the Brunei Chevening Youth Forum. And that's where we brought together our young people to have constructive feedback engagements towards national development. There's this societal perception about, oh, we cannot speak in public, there's no platform for engagement. So I wanted to sort of like break that glass ceiling, I suppose. And over the years, we've seen our young people launch their speaking careers, moderating careers through the platform, where we were able to, I think, host about 12 to 13 forums in Brunei, engaging over thousands of young people. So I do believe that we have contributed to some change because we have proven to our government as well that our young people is ready to be able to engage constructively. So I think that's very important because that's something that I suppose for our nation to progress, we need to be able to have comments, criticisms that are constructive.
I can see that. I can hear that passion. And there are two things which came to my mind when I was listening to you. One is clearly that identity crisis is not there anymore. I think Brunei is lucky to have Fatin in their country, right? You're only thinking about the people in the nation and how you can develop them. And then, of course, like you and I are saying, like-minded people get together. So almost 8 years back, I started my volunteering journey where, I helped this NGO called Jai Foundation. And I continue to help them on remote. I, moved in India from one city to the other city, and now I live in the US. And I continue to support them and coach the team and work with the CEO and so on and so forth. And my perspective is that volunteering is the most purposeful journey. I personally believe that as a volunteer, you gain more than you give to the organization.
Yes.
You grow as a person, you learn as a person, you feel grateful as a person. You have so much perspective as a person. So yeah, I totally echo what you're saying, and it's amazing. You're almost like living two parallel lives, like So
Thank you. Yeah, giving makes us happy, whether we realize it or not. Actually, giving makes us happy. So I think that's always been something, I guess, that drives me forward. And also part of me that is thankful to the government of Brunei for now taking me as a Brunei citizen. Even though my father is Malaysian, now I'm a Brunei citizen for the past, I think, 17 years. Much thanks also to my mom for fighting for our right here in Brunei. Yes.
amazing. So let's shift gears a little bit, Fatin. What are the highlights of your achievements in your journey in Ghanim?
So I joined Ghanim about 7+ years ago. At that time, I was actually consulting for small businesses, helping businesses turn around. So I met the CEO at that time in one of the meetings, and he was so insistent at that time for me to join Ghanim, to look at marketing for Ghanim. So due to his persistence, which I appreciated, I felt with a leader like this, things can be better. Then I decided to close down my small business, which was run by myself and also some part-timers at that time. I started out as marketing, and then after that, I've gone full circle now, alhamdulillah, except finance, gone into product development, and now I am the senior manager for business development and strategy, looking at new revenue opportunities. I work with my CEO closely and in turning around the company towards profitability. And yeah, we work together with our board, with our ministers as well, because our company is important to the nation. So there's a lot of steering, there's a lot of engagement that we have to do with our government to ensure that we're doing the right things. And one of the beautiful things that we do at Ghanim, and that's something that I feel so close to, is we work in partnership with local businesses, the small enterprises mostly, because Brunei is made up of many, many small and micro businesses here in Brunei, where we support their growth through developing, marketing and promoting products under the Brunei Halal Foods brand. So rather than ENMA trying to go and export by yourself, we work together with ENMA, put the ENMA brand under the Brunei Halal Foods brand, and then we bring it out for export together. And I guess, being the first in Brunei to do this, right, is very challenging, especially coming in the FMCG business. Profitability and margin is very small, and it's all about volume game. And you're talking about competing with hundreds and thousands of brands globally, from the likes of Nestle to the likes of Heinz Kraft, and everything in between. And this year, we've been able to actually develop what we call the Brunei Food Industry Development Manufacturing Facility, because all this time we've been working in partnership with the local businesses, basically third-party manufacturing with them.
Given that you were literally like the trailblazers in the country, in a sense, right? I remember you mentioning that the government is the biggest employer, right? And there's a very little bit of private enterprise. Any anecdotes or any stories come to your mind which gave you a lot of sense of achievement?
So I made a conscious decision many years ago to be part of the private sector, because I do believe that when you have a lot of energy, being in the private sector is where you will help the growth of Brunei. Whereas when you are in government, you will be part of the bureaucracy. So I've always been quite entrepreneurial in nature, alhamdulillah. And so I wanted to use those skills in the private sector, because I really feel strongly that Brunei can develop. We have the capacity, we have the money, we have the funding to do so. But it's really about having people to want to drive the development of the private sector. For example, in my team, I manage a team of 25 people, plus minus. And for Brunei, that's quite a big team in the private sector. The whole company is close to 100 now, because we're growing. We're just starting out with our manufacturing this year. So I've had to, over the years, build my team capacity to be able to meet the organizational goals and the national goals as well. So it's all a lot of learning together. And yeah, I am so proud to, see how my team is growing. I have had graduates with no prior work experience join my sales team, and now they're making good revenue for the company, So pretty proud to see our Bruneians growing. And I do believe that it's very important to have people willing to push. And yeah, so we see that growing in Brunei, alhamdulillah.
Sounds like your biggest achievement was that you took a very raw team, a team which almost like freshers, and you developed them, you groomed them into professionals who were achieving and who were adding a lot of value.
I would say that was work together with my CEO, and not my own accomplishment, but it was intentional, I suppose. We wanted to prove that, our Bruneians can do it. And I think that's important to provide platforms, because in Brunei, we have had this habit that, when a Bruneian cannot do it, let's give it to a foreigner. It's not to say it's bad, but our locals will not grow if we don't give them the pressure as well. Because I think that's why Brunei has been struggling to grow as well. We have such a beautiful welfare system here, welfare society. Education is free up until university. In fact, when you go to university, the government gives you allowance to study. Okay, medical care is free. So we have it very good. So sometimes when you have it very good, when you have it very easy, people are comfortable. So that's why we are different in Ghanim, where we put a lot of pressure on our team to strive bigger. And, it's all really about making the team understand the important role that we play and how we can contribute.
Mm. Very interesting. It sounds like it's an entitled nation which is happy the way things are going on. And there is this Fatin who has come and said, no, come on, like, get your act together and do more.
There are others, I believe. There are many others, alhamdulillah. Like, our young people are really now rising here in Brunei. I'm just one of them, Enma.
You're very humble, Fatin. I'm wondering, there must have been naysayers in this kind of a journey. People must be saying, we're a rich nation, we're a comfortable nation. Why are you rocking the boat? Why are you interested in pushing us to work harder? Let us enjoy life. Share with us some stories on how Fatin convinced them and helped them understand the importance of this.
This was 5-7 years ago. I was active doing community work outside the country. I met someone through the ASEAN network of young entrepreneurs, where we ended up developing an NGO together in Cambodia called the Organization for Building Community Resources. So I was always going there twice a year. There is a school that supports teaching English to young Cambodians, because Cambodia has a challenging education system. The education system is Khmer language, which is the local language. But, young people, especially in the rural areas, don't have the opportunity to learn English. So I used to have naysayers who used to say to me, why are you helping other countries and not Brunei? Obviously, getting comments like that make you feel very down, just like how it was for me during my early years of facing identity crisis. But what I realized is that people will always have comments, but you have to understand their intentions. Maybe a lot of those people who used to question me don't know that I'm also doing work in Brunei. So it was about getting people to understand.
I am curious to know that, given that you're doing so much work, given that you're sort of involved in so many things, what really inspired you to look at Cambodia and doing community work there?
So being part of YEAB, I've had the opportunity to travel through other countries at that time. And through all the travels that I do, I meet people. And so sometimes, you make the connection and you get in touch over the years, right? So this was the same with me and Riaxmi, who owns OBCR. So he was telling me, Fatin, I am running out of funds with running my NGO. I wanted to get your thoughts and views about what I should do next. It's not easy to advise when you don't know what the situation is on the ground. So, it started out with this innocent commitment of just going there. I spent 2 weeks of my life-changing in Cambodia. This was a beautiful, tiny school that you have a makeshift in your own house where you put a small classroom there. So I was so inspired that the community, despite being poor or less privileged, they were happy. They were helping each other. And imagine the school was run by three girls who were in high school with broken English. Learning from them, right? Like knowing how they go to school, and then in the afternoon or in the morning when they don't have school, they teach young people English just because they want to make a change in the lives of these young people, because it opens up many more doors for them as compared to if they only knew their local language. That got me to rethink that, wow, I come from a very privileged background here in Brunei. What can I do to help ensure that he does not close this initiative down? So I started bringing volunteers. Every 6 months, we bring volunteers to go there. I think we were able to bring a couple of 100 volunteers over the years to OBCR, but unfortunately, OBCR have had to close down due to COVID at that time. So we're working to think about ways to revive, but life has changed and the kids have grown up. So along the way, I sat down together with my friends here in Brunei about how we can help OBCR. So what we did was we started collecting some funds. So we built a proper school structure at OBCR through my connection with a local NGO in Brunei as well, Society for Community Outreach and Training. So I joined what we call the Society for Community Outreach and Training in Brunei, where I partnered Scott to work with OBCR. I guess it became a catalyst, I suppose. So we collected funds and used those funds to also pay the teachers. And you know what? When you started paying the teachers, only $60 US dollars per month, they started being able to go to university. So we have teachers who used to be teaching at OBCR who now have become doctors, people who become environmentalists. So that's the beautiful impact story there.
That's a beautiful story. Let's shift gears a little bit, right? So you've traveled to 40 countries in only 30 years. And I know that a lot of those travels are solo, right? How do you think these travels have helped you build your personality? Nobody will believe that you're an introvert.
Nobody believes me, to be honest.
Will you still call yourself?
True at heart, because introversion and extroversion is where you gain your energy from. I gain my energy also from being alone, from recuperating my time and spending my time alone. Yes. That's how I define it. Yes.
Okay. So talk to me about, your travels and how do you navigate so many cultures?
Yeah. Wow. I started self-traveling at the age of 7 when my father sent us to boarding school. He put us on a plane and we had to get ourselves to the other side, where my aunties picked us up, obviously, from the airport. So I guess I grew up with this sense of independence. And when I was 16 years old, there's a backstory there as well. I always had this dream to be a doctor. But because at that age, I was not yet a Brunei citizen, so I was not qualified for scholarship. And obviously, because my parents have 7 kids, I cannot be selfish to ask my father to spend his income to ensure that I get a medical degree. So I don't come from a well-off background per se. We have middle class. My parents made a negotiation with me to allow me to pick the course because they couldn't send me to medical school. And obviously, Malaysia was the destination for me to go and study at that time because it was natural. Since I was a Malaysian citizen, things would be much cheaper there for me. So I basically chose a university and my father gave me the money and the air ticket to travel by myself. So I've had to go and register myself. So after that, feeling that I could do it, right, gives me that travel itch, of course. So when I was in university, my roommate suddenly announced that she was going to go back to her country because she wants to pursue a medical degree instead of doing what she was doing in Malaysia at that time. And she was an Omani girl. And I was very close to her. So she says, come over to Oman. And, I asked my father, would you allow me to travel to Oman by myself? And my father said, do anything that you want for as long as it is at your own effort. So that was how I started my traveling journey as well, I suppose. Having traveled to one country makes you want to travel to many other countries. So I made travel as one of my commitment because I think travel gives you that sense of euphoria that is good. When you see other people's culture, you tend to appreciate your culture more. What I didn't realize was majority of my travels have always been by myself, solo. So part of the travels as well that I do has been through work as well, because I volunteer also for the APAC Business Advisory Council, where I was able to travel to different APAC economies, Asia Pacific economies. When I travel, I also take time to discover the country. Some of my adventures have been For example, getting stuck in United States because I could not enter Mexico because I didn't have a visa, for example. Trying to cross the border from Azerbaijan to Tbilisi, Georgia. Having a passport of Brunei makes you somewhat limited edition because a lot of people don't know this country exists. Negotiating like, no, Brunei exists. And at that time, you don't have Wi-Fi, for example, to try to show them Brunei. And yeah, I guess, traveling alone makes you resourceful. There have been times when I was stuck somewhere when I didn't have money in my bank account, for example, being young and reckless sometimes, right? Or your bank card not working, surviving through that. Those are some of my travel adventures. And along the way, I realized that one of the main important things, it has built my self-confidence personally, because we grow up as Asians, maybe not for you, but more like for Southeast Asians, we tend to have this perception that other people are better than us. White people are better than us. When I traveled the world, being part of many different exchange programs, I realized that, hey, we Bruneians can compete, so sense of confidence grow from there as well. So that's the beauty of travel, I suppose.
Of course, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. And in fact, I always believe that I have become what I have become a lot because of my travel, my exposure, and that whole experience is just so different. Even if it sounds evangelical, I feel if through these conversations we can inspire somebody sitting in a small town in India or Brunei or anywhere else in the world, I think we are doing our bit of paying it forward. So I totally get what you're saying, It adds to us, but how can we help others also? That was my thought process when I started this initiative.
Yes.
When you said that your father said, fend for yourself and go to Oman, and you were only a student at that time. So how did you make it happen?
Yes, I worked part-time for about 6 months. Did my savings and worked part-time to get the money that I needed to travel. Yes.
Nice. So any sort of stories come to your mind where you had to face any challenges as you navigated different cultures, any cultural shock?
Yeah, not so much cultural shock. I think that's where you have to prepare yourself to be open. Being open to respecting other cultures. I think that's important. And I think also second is also importantly enough to be able to be prepared to be uncomfortable. For example, when I was trying to cross the border from Azerbaijan to Georgia, because I wanted to do a land travel instead. So at that time, I was staying with a host family. The host family was recommending me that, instead of you going back down to Baku, to the main city, which will take you another additional 10 hours, why don't you just cross from here to here? So my mistake was I didn't ask that many questions. The language barrier was there. And also connection. I didn't have a phone line that was working when I had to negotiate my travel across the border. So that was the challenging part. That was one of the uncomfortable journey because I could have gotten in trouble. So when I came, I was different, right? I was looking like this and people didn't look like me very much. So that got people to be very curious about me. So I had so many people coming around me because they knew that I needed transportation. But it was something that I had to make a choice about. Who do I select, transport me across, and who would understand me? So I also had to use my instinct. Who would I trust amongst all of these? Because the journey would have taken me 2 hours. So imagine I could have gone anywhere. Like if I had selected the wrong person, my parents would not have known what would happen and things like that. And I didn't want to worry them as well. So Alhamdulillah, I managed to survive that. Those were one of the riskiest move I've had to make in solo traveling.
That's crazy. Fatin, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, kudos to you. And more than you, kudos to your parents. Like, I can only imagine how nervous you would have made them over the years.
No, there's a secret there.
Yeah, what is that secret?
The secret is to tell your parents what they need to know only. Yes. Don't tell them something that would cause them to be stressed or what. But always be resourceful, I suppose. So, one of my travel adventure in Hong Kong, right? I was on my way to the airport and I was using the train to get to the airport. And I was carrying so many things at that time. So I made a mistake of leaving my handbag with my mobile phone. So I had one phone that was always easy for me to text out of the country, the roaming phone. Alhamdulillah, I got that phone in my pocket. But I had my passport, my money, everything inside my handbag that I left in the train, and that train went down to the city. And I was going to the counter and they were asking me for my passport. And that's when I realized I left my whole handbag in the train. I was, I guess, lucky. And this is much thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I got my handbag back within 1 hour and 30 minutes. And everything was intact. Beautifully, I was able to go back to Brunei the same day. So at that time, I contacted my parents and told them, this is what I told them. Mom, Dad, please don't worry. I may not come home today. I left my passport somewhere and I'm sorting that out. So those are things or skills that I've had to develop, I suppose, over the years.
True. You share that you grew up among strong women. But having said that, I can't imagine that Fatim is symbolic of a typical woman in any country, forget Brunei. So
No, I would say, Bruneian women are very empowered and very valued as well. We are very valued in society. In a sense, here in Brunei, we don't have that much of issue of, I dare say it because I feel I don't get the negative comments about being a women leader, for example, as opposed to my other colleagues, around the world, and even in the US, for example. I don't feel that sense of comparison, I suppose, in terms of my capabilities. But in Brunei in general, women are advancing well. Women are graduating much more than men, as per the global movement, right? And that's because more women are participating in the workforce as well. So, and women are amazing at juggling family and commitments and priorities. And you see much more, women rising up to be CEOs of government companies, now increasingly women. Leadership team are increasingly more women. In fact, sometimes we have to be intentional about developing male in our management team as well. And that's probably a problem only in Brunei, because Bruneian women are very dynamic and very strong-willed as well, I would say.
So it's a DEI of a different kind. I love that.
Yes. And it's lovely to be here in Brunei and not face the issue of comparison or the issue of capabilities or being compared to men, for example. We don't feel that way here in Brunei, alhamdulillah.
Nice. You spoke about the value system of Brunei, which is very unique.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
So what makes Brunei unique is also that we uphold what we call our MIB philosophy, Malay Islamic Monarchy philosophy. Malay being there's 7 puaks. We call it under Malay, there's 7 puak. That's the race of Brunei, right? And then basically upholding the rights of our citizens. Okay, that's important for this country. Islamic, being an Islamic country, we uphold Islam much strongly here in Brunei. And then monarchy, upholding our kingdom, upholding our sultanate, upholding our king as the monarch. It's what makes Brunei unique in a sense where, we get all this pressure of, for example, complying to international pressure due to trade. How the issue of Islamic nations having to support Israel or recognizing Israel. I'm talking about a sensitive subject here, right? But whereas for Brunei, right, we have our sovereignty where we don't follow what others are doing per se. We're following our principles, basically. And that's something that makes Brunei so unique. And it also makes us one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And I know crime rates have been increasing, of course, most recently due to, lack of work opportunities. But I can still leave my engine open when I go to the convenience store, for example. You can still leave your house door open without burglary. But of course, not to, be careless about it, obviously. But, that's the sort of like sense of community that we have here in Brunei. And part of like being an MIB as well is having that work-life balance as well in life here in Brunei, where family is very much central to our community fabric. So we spend a lot of time with family here over the weekends. Like, for example, today, I'll be having breakfast with my parents. Some of my siblings live by themselves and all that. So we spend a lot of time with family over the weekend. Sometimes almost every day as well, we smother ourselves with family here. And that's the beauty of Brunei.
Fatin, personal question, and please feel free to answer or not answer. You're wearing the hijab. One reads about it, but to hear from somebody in the first person is very different. So is it compulsory for every woman to wear the hijab? And given the amount of travels you've done, are you wearing it by choice or are you wearing it more because it's meant to be worn?
Yeah, I mean, I wear it with pride because I want to be recognized as a Muslim woman, of course. And also in terms of, I think that's something that hijab gives to us women, because when we cover ourselves up modestly, we feel that the attention on our body is not there. It's more towards our intellect and our character, basically. I find comfort in that. And I'm also working on deepening my faith as well, learning more about the religion, whether it's compulsory. In the country, government do not make it compulsory for everybody to wear hijab, except it's a dress code for people who work in the government, of course. And when you go to the mosque and things like that. But at the end of the day, it is a personal choice for women. But obviously, religion-wise, it's not encouraged, but rather it is part of our obligation as a Muslim as well, actually, to wear our hijab and to wear clothes modestly. So, yes, having traveled the world, I have put on my hijab most of the time. I observe my hijab much more strictly over the past, I think, 7-8 years, I think. But before that, I was quite situational. So I wear hijab in general, but sometimes when I travel, I probably take it off when I felt it was safer to do so. So yeah, it's a choice. And it goes back down to the identity, remember? Because identity is so important to me as well now. I feel like it helps me to observe my faith much more. And I feel it makes me much closer to my creator as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you feel that your life is full of purpose and when you feel like you're doing the right things, I think you get a sense of peace and calm and tranquility. And I think that's important for us to be happy. So I think that's my spiritual connection, I suppose, to my religion.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this, Fatin. I really appreciate it. Fatin, did you ever experience imposter syndrome?
Of course, I think imposter syndrome, we face that every day. It's like being a manager, sometimes I question myself, like, am I equipped to lead? Especially when you have to make tough decisions or when you have to do the tough things, that others don't want to do. Because being a leader, you always have to make tough choices, right? And leadership, I realize, is a lonely journey. The higher up you go, the more lonelier it is, the more enemies you make. Why? Because sometimes you cannot please everybody. So I've always have this also principle to always do the right things, even when I'm on the losing end. So that helps to guide my decisions as well. For example, when you have to let go of someone, these are realities that you have to face, right?
I know you're doing a lot to pay back as a mentor or to develop the younger generation. How you shared that leadership is a lonely journey. Who was your go-to person? Talk to me about mentors in your journey or who guided you then?
Yes, I think when things get tough, I go to people who I feel have gone through that journey. So I don't have one or two mentors per se. I have people, or rather my tribe of trusted network that I go to. And sometimes they could also be someone that I am acquainted with, may not be necessarily close to. So I would just, probably seek for the advice openly, like, I'm going through this. It's important to actually not be shy to reach out. And you'll be surprised that many people want to help. And many people will give you different opinions as well, where you then can make the right or the better choice, I suppose. And, someone who is inspiring and always, guiding is also my CEO, Dr. Nur Rahman. Much of where we are at today with Ghanim, the company, is also because of his leadership. He's always been very optimistic, very persistent. And whenever challenges come our way, that sometimes I feel, oh, is this the end of it? But, we navigate through it together. So I think, much thanks to my CEO as well for his enthusiasm, his optimism. And it's very hard to be optimistic always when you're a leader. And that's something that I always have to remind myself. And this is where my imposter syndrome also comes in, like where I say, am I equipped to be the right leader? Because I am not like my CEO, for example. Sometimes think about, I have to be my own leader. So it's not to be like someone else, you have to develop your own leadership identity, I suppose. And that's work in progress for me.
Are you intentional about your leadership style and how will you define it?
That's really a tough one. I've always been questioning, what's my leadership style? But for me, I think personally, I like to take the visionary approach and the empowerment approach. But also empowerment, you can give empowerment to someone who is well equipped and well skilled. But empowerment does not work on someone who does not have the skill, no experience or maturity to take it. So I would say I do things circumstantially as well. There's no one size fits all approach. I don't believe in that. But in general, when you lead, I suppose I tend to convey things openly. When things are bad, I will say it out. For example, in our culture here in Brunei, you don't know when things are bad because they don't say it out to you. But on the back end, like people always talking behind your back. So for me, I want to have a cultural shift here in Brunei where we have to be able to talk about uncomfortable things openly. And I find that very important. When things are not doing well, I convey it to them. Like when things are, but we also think together. Like I want them to be more accountable about what do we need to do next? What can we do to resolve this problem? So I think that's always very important because growth will come from there. Growth do not come in comfortable situations. Growth only comes in uncomfortable situations. So I've seen my team grow significantly. And it's always very important for me as well to grow others, meaning to say it's not about me, it's about growing others. So when you are a leader to others, it's about growing others. That's very important to be intentional about, basically.
Great way to end the conversation, Fatin. Since Atlanta Diaries is a place where we're helping aspiring women leaders learn and sometimes unlearn their definitions of success, what are your parting thoughts for these leaders as they transition into larger roles?
I think I would like to relate this to vulnerability. To be honest, it's very difficult because vulnerability has very different definitions to different people and different understanding. So for me, part of my vulnerability is to express my emotions authentically. That's something that I think very scary for a lot of people, I suppose, especially as you step up in leadership, because you want to be popular. We humans are, Paulo Coelho says this, we are weak on two things, right? We want to be recognized and we want to be appreciated. And taking the unpopular route is very, very difficult. That's something that I teach my team to do as well. And I have to constantly remind myself to be brave, to be authentic. When things are not right, say it as it is, not to sugarcoat it. I think that's very important for us to be very impactful. So I think that's my parting thoughts, I suppose.
Thank you very much, Fatin. This was an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much, Enma, for this wonderful opportunity and for what you do.
Thank you very much for listening. All my guests have brought their most vulnerable selves on Atlanta Diaries. And even if a small segment of these conversations can help champion the journey of one person, it's going to be really worth it. I do have a request for you. Please share this podcast on your social media and with your family and friends. Our society is constantly evolving and Atlanta Diaries must too. I really appreciate if you can leave your feedback in the form of a review or a rating. These are impactful and rousing stories that need to be shared far and wide. See you next time for another one on Atlanta Diaries.